Why do some women move through a chaotic world with an unshakable sense of peace and self-worth, while others remain trapped in a cycle of anxiety, people-pleasing, and quiet desperation? The answer isn't found in another self-help book, a rigid skincare routine, or achieving the perfect career. The foundation is far more profound, and it begins with a journey inward that most are too afraid to take. The great psychiatrist Carl Jung understood this intimately. He proposed that a woman's authentic confidence and deep happiness aren't built by adding more achievements to her life. Instead, they emerge from a process of reclaiming the parts of herself she's been taught to disown. Over the next few minutes, we'll walk that path together. If you are tired of performing, of feeling like you're merely playing a role written for you by others, then stay with me. By the end, you'll understand the blueprint for building a self that is not only confident, but truly your own. Part 1. Stop fighting your own shadow. There's a crucial misunderstanding many of us absorb growing up. We're taught that the goal of personal growth is to eliminate everything unpleasant within us, to cut out the anger, to suppress the jealousy, to silence the unacceptable needs. But here's the truth no one tells you. A woman who has found true happiness isn't one who has exorcised her inner demons. She is someone who has learned to sit with them. She has stopped running from the darker corners of her own soul. The secret is not in the light you gather, but in the darkness you are willing to explore. This shadow self is not an enemy lurking outside. It's the accumulation of every part of you that you were told wasn't okay. The frustration you swallowed when you were dismissed. The longing for recognition you labeled as needy and buried. The anger you quickly hid behind a polite smile because you were taught it wasn't ladylike. And here's the paradox. These denied parts don't vanish. They simply go underground, becoming a silent puppet master pulling your strings from the darkness. You might find yourself overreacting to a minor slight, feeling a wave of jealousy that doesn't make sense, or getting inexplicably exhausted in relationships. That's your shadow, speaking a language you refuse to translate. Take the story of Sarah, a woman known for her calm, rational demeanor. She prided herself on not being dramatic. In her work life, this served her well, but in her personal life, she was a mystery to herself. Small disappointments from her partner would fester. She'd remain silent, biting back her true feelings until, inevitably, a small trigger would cause her to erupt in a flood of emotion she couldn't control. Afterward, she'd apologize, calling herself too sensitive, and resolved to control her emotions even more tightly. What she didn't see was that her calm persona was a fortress built to imprison her anger. Denying her anger a voice, it grew stronger, plotting its escape. The real problem wasn't her sensitivity. It was that she had never granted her authentic emotions the right to exist. When she finally began to acknowledge her irritation as it arose, to whisper, "I am angry right now," to herself, the dynamic shifted. The need to explode vanished because the energy was no longer being suppressed. It was being witnessed. This is how the shadow operates. The more fiercely you deny it, the more power it gains over your life. You start to see your own disowned traits in others, projecting your unexpressed anger onto a rude colleague, or your hidden envy onto a selfish friend. Jung famously stated that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is not a poetic sentiment. It's a psychological law. You are not in control of your life until you are willing to look at the parts of yourself you'd rather not see. A woman who is truly at peace isn't one without a shadow. She's one who has the courage to turn around and face it. This transformation doesn't require a grand, dramatic confession. It starts in the small, quiet moments. It's that pause after a frustrating interaction where you ask yourself, why did that trigger me so intensely? It's that moment of discomfort where you choose to sit with the feeling instead of reaching for your phone to numb it. It's within those quiet, uncomfortable pauses that a door opens, allowing you to step closer to the wholeness of who you are. There's a world of difference between trying to be better and striving to be whole. Striving for better is about self-optimization, trying to erase your flaws like imperfections on a photograph. Striving for wholeness is about integrating your flaws, seeing them not as defects, but as essential elements of a richer, more authentic portrait. A happy woman doesn't aim for perfection. She aims for authenticity. She learns to hold her light and her shadow in equal regard. This isn't about surrendering to destructive impulses. It's about gaining choice. When you recognize your anger, you can choose to express it constructively. When you acknowledge your jealousy, you can address its root cause rather than being secretly controlled by it. The moment you stop being driven by unconscious reactions, you reclaim authorship of your life. Your emotions are no longer tyrants to be feared, but messengers to be heard. Your discomfort is no longer a weakness to be hidden, but a compass and pointing toward where you need to heal. And from this new understanding, a quiet mastery emerges. You know when to stand firm and when to step back, not because a rule book tells you to, but because you are now intimately familiar with the landscape of your own soul. The shadow is no longer a puppet master. It has become a companion, a source of deep grounded wisdom. Part 2. Breaking the mask of perfection. But what happens when you start to see your shadow clearly? You realize there's another layer of protection you've been wearing. A carefully constructed mask designed to earn approval, to fit in, to be loved. Think about your own life. There are moments when you catch yourself answering a question not with your truth, but with what you think the other person wants to hear. You laugh at a joke that isn't funny. You agree to a plan you have no energy for. It all flows smoothly, and you are rewarded with acceptance. Yet a quiet voice within whispers, "Is this really me?" This mask, which Jung called the persona, is not inherently evil. It's a social survival tool we develop early on. You learn to be good, to get praise, to be easygoing, to avoid conflict, to be strong, to hide your vulnerability. Over time, this mask doesn't just hide your true self. You begin to believe that the mask is your true self. A confident woman has worn this mask. She knows the exhaustion of being agreeable to avoid abandonment, of being the perfect daughter, the cooperative colleague, the understanding partner who never has needs of her own. And because she plays these roles so well, the slow disappearance of her authentic self goes unnoticed, even to her. The danger of the persona is not that it makes you fake. The danger is that it creates a deep chasm between your outward behavior and your inner experience. You become an expert at pleasing others, but a stranger to yourself. You're liked, admired, and trusted, yet you feel profoundly alone because no one is truly relating to you. They are relating to the role you're playing. Jung understood this deep-seated alienation. He wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But the prerequisite is recognizing that at some point, you stopped being that person. This realization is jarring. It's like staring into a mirror and seeing a face that is familiar, yet somehow not your own. So, how does a woman begin to break this mask? It starts with a deceptively small act. The pause. She stops automatically agreeing. She gives herself permission to hesitate before responding, to feel the gap between the expected answer and the authentic one. That silence, as uncomfortable as it may be, is revolutionary. It's the moment she chooses herself over the script. This process is not without its costs. When you stop being the person everyone expects you to be, you will feel the shift. People will react. Some will express discomfort. Some will distance themselves. Some will even say, with a hint of accusation, "You've changed." And in those moments, the old fear returns. The fear of rejection, of being unloved. This is the critical point where many retreat, donning their familiar mask once more to soothe the sting of disapproval. But a woman who is serious about becoming herself understands a fundamental truth. Acceptance gained at the expense of your authenticity is a prison, not a prize. A relationship that demands you shrink to fit is a relationship that will ultimately suffocate you. The cost of this compromise isn't always visible, but it's felt in the quiet erosion of your self-worth, in the growing resentment, in the feeling that you're living a life that belongs to someone else. When she begins to safeguard even a small slice of her true self, she begins to construct a new kind of confidence. This confidence is not built on external validation. It's like the difference between a tree that is pruned and shaped into a topiary, beautiful but dependent on constant maintenance, and a tree that grows wild and free, its roots sinking deep into the earth, unshaken by the wind. A woman living through her persona is the topiary. A woman breaking it is the wild tree. This shift aligns with modern psychology's concept of self-congruence, a state where your actions and your beliefs are in harmony. Research shows that people who live congruently experience less anxiety, greater meaning, and stronger mental health. The tension of constantly performing wears you down from the inside, even if you appear successful on the outside. As the mask falls away, you may not feel immediate confidence. You might feel a strange emptiness, a sense of being unmoored. You are no longer the nice girl or the perfect partner, but you haven't yet fully defined who you are in their place. This is the void where your authentic self is waiting to be born. Within this space, you begin to build a new identity, not based on expectations, but on your direct lived experience. You start to trust the quiet voice within that you once silenced. You no longer live for acceptance. You live from a grounded sense of inner authority. You might not be as easy to be around anymore, but in return, your words and your choices carry a weight they never had before. They carry truth. And when your value is no longer held in the hands of others, rejection loses its power over you. Part 3. Integrating the duality within. When the shadow is faced and the persona is shed, you find yourself standing in a new, clearer space. But now, a new challenge arises, learning to hold the seemingly opposite energies that exist within you. There's a narrow view of femininity that is often passed down. It equates being a woman with being soft, nurturing, selfless, and emotionally available at all times. This is a limiting definition, a gilded cage. Your strength doesn't diminish your femininity. Your depth defines it. Truly confident, women don't abandon their femininity, but they refuse to be imprisoned by a one-dimensional version of it. They do something much more powerful. They return to the source of their inner energy, allowing both their intuitive, feeling nature and their decisive, action-oriented nature to coexist in harmony. Every woman carries within her two parallel currents. One is receptive, intuitive, and connective. The other is assertive, analytical, and goal-driven. When these currents are out of balance, life becomes a struggle. Some women are taught only how to give, to nurture, to please. They pour themselves into others until they feel hollow, their own boundaries non-existent. Others, in reaction, swing to the opposite extreme, hardening themselves, rejecting their softness, becoming hyper-independent to the point of isolation. True confidence isn't choosing one side over the other. It's the art of allowing both to exist without one canceling out the other. It's the ability to feel deeply without being swept away, and to act with clarity without becoming cold. Imagine a river. Without its banks, the water would spread out into a useless marsh, losing its power and direction. Without the water, the banks are just a dry, barren trench. But when both are present, the fluid, water, and the containing banks, you have a powerful, directed flow that carves canyons and nurtures life. The water is your feminine energy, feeling, intuition, connection. The bank is your inner structure, your boundaries, your logic, your will. A woman in her power has both. This integration shows up in the simplest of choices, like making a decision. A woman disconnected from her intuition might make a choice that is logical on paper, only to feel a lingering emptiness afterward. A woman disconnected from her reason might make a choice based on fleeting emotion, leading to instability. But when both are integrated, she makes decisions that are both smart and feel deeply right. This is the confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. It's present in the way she speaks, with clarity and compassion. It's in the way she listens, attentive but not porous. It's in the way she holds her ground, firm but not rigid. This balance is not a gift you receive, it's a skill you build. It begins with the awareness of where you lean. If you've been living in your head, dismissing your feelings as irrational, you must learn to trust your gut again. If you've been living in your feelings, overwhelmed by the emotions of others, you must learn to build the banks of your own boundaries. When you do this, you no longer seek a partner to be your missing piece, your strong leader, or your soft supporter. You enter relationships as a whole person, not looking to be completed, but ready to connect. To nurture this inner balance is to return to your most natural state, where your heart and your mind are allies, not adversaries. Confidence then stops being a pose you force yourself to strike. It becomes a steady internal hum, a home you can always return to. Part 4. Embracing the solitude of self-discovery. And yet, to build this home within yourself, you must pass through a territory that many spend their whole lives trying to avoid. Solitude. There's a hard truth about the journey toward authenticity. It is a path you walk largely alone, not because no one cares about you, but because the process of becoming yourself inevitably creates a distance from what was once familiar. You will find you no longer fit into old conversations. Old relationships built on the version of you that was performing will begin to feel hollow. And in that silent space, the temptation is to rush back to the familiar, to fill the void with noise, to avoid the uncomfortable stillness at all costs. A woman who is building true happiness does the opposite. She doesn't run from the loneliness. She recognizes it as a necessary phase of growth. It's a sign she is outgrowing her old skin. Many confuse this kind of loneliness with abandonment. Abandonment is a feeling of lack, as if something is being taken from you. But the loneliness of growth is different. It's like stepping out of a crowded, noisy party into a quiet, starry night. At first, the silence is startling, even unsettling. But if you stay with it, your senses adjust. You start to hear the subtle sounds you were missing. The wind, the crickets, your own thoughts. That's the work of solitude. It allows the dust to settle so you can finally see who you are. Consider a woman who ended a long-term relationship. Initially, she feared the empty evenings more than the loss of the person. She filled her calendar, worked late, stayed out with friends. But the exhaustion only grew. Until one night, she stayed home, turned off her phone, and did nothing. The silence was uncomfortable, but within it, she began to hear herself. She began to ask questions she'd been avoiding. What do I want for dinner? What do I want to do this weekend? What kind of life do I actually want to build? Jung wrote that loneliness comes not from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. When you don't yet know what is important to you, you can be in a crowd and feel utterly isolated. But when you begin to understand your own inner world, loneliness transforms. It becomes a choice, a sacred space for reconnection. This is a crucial pivot point. Only when you can be alone without feeling empty can you enter a relationship without losing yourself. If you need others to fill a void, you will be more vulnerable to unhealthy dynamics. But when you are comfortable with your own presence, your standards change. You no longer choose someone just to escape being alone. You choose someone because they truly align with who you are. This solitude is also where the uncomfortable truths you've been distracting yourself from finally surface. You see the patterns. The same type of partner you keep choosing, the chronic people-pleasing, the deep-seated belief that you aren't enough. These aren't fun revelations, but they are necessary. Without the space to see them, you remain trapped in a cycle, reacting to life from the same old wounds. Think of it like letting a glass of muddy water stand still. When you're constantly shaking it, with activity, with relationships, with distraction, the water remains cloudy. But when you let it sit, the sediment slowly sinks, and the water becomes clear. Clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from allowing yourself to be still enough to see. Women who embrace the solitude are not cold or detached. On the contrary, they have a profound capacity for connection. But their connection is now born from intention and awareness, not from a desperate need to be saved. They can love without losing themselves. They can bond without dissolving their boundaries. Your ability to be alone is the foundation of your ability to be truly with another. This journey isn't comfortable. There will be days you doubt your choices and long for the easy familiarity of your old life. But if you stay the course, you'll notice a shift. You'll no longer fear the silence. You'll stop scanning the room for approval. You'll feel a sense of wholeness even when you are physically alone. And from this foundation, a confidence emerges that is unshakable because it's not built on anything external. It's the quiet knowledge that you can be alone and be okay, that you don't have to trade your soul to keep someone by your side. Part 5, the journey to wholeness. Now we come to the heart of it all. Facing the shadow, shedding the persona, integrating your inner duality, embracing solitude. These are not separate tasks. They are all part of one overarching process, a process Jung called individuation. Individuation is not about becoming a perfect person. It's about becoming a whole person. It's not about self-improvement in the modern sense. It's about self-realization. It is the gradual, often difficult journey of peeling away everything that is not authentically you. All those borrowed beliefs, the learned roles, the masks you wore for survival. They are stripped away, one by one. You face your shadow and realize those rejected parts are not your enemies, but your allies. You break the persona and discover the person underneath was there all along. You learn to hold your strength and your vulnerability as two sides of the same coin. This process is not a glorious ascension into the light. It often feels like a descent. You go inward, confronting wounds you'd rather forget, reconciling with your past, and learning to live with your entire being. Your light, your darkness, your reason, your intuition. Only when these parts are integrated do you stop living a divided existence, always trying to become someone else, and begin living a life that is authentically your own. A woman who went through this shared, I spent decades building a person I thought the world wanted. I was a success, but I was a stranger to myself. When I finally started to listen to the little girl I had abandoned, the one who loved to paint and hated crowds, I realized I hadn't lived a single day for myself. And I knew I could never go back to pretending. The path of individuation is not linear. There will be times you feel lost, caught between the old world you no longer belong to and the new one you haven't fully entered. This journey asks for immense courage, the courage to step into unfamiliar territory, to sit with unnamed fears, to question beliefs you've held for a lifetime. Jung believed that we cannot truly mature until we separate ourselves from our psychological inheritance. The voices of our parents, the doctrines of our culture, the expectations of our ancestors. A woman on this path learns to listen to these voices, to respect their origins, but ultimately to decide what is truly hers and what is merely an echo. And this is where the most challenging resistance comes from, the outside world, because when you change, you become a mirror for others, and not everyone wants to look. When you start saying no, when you create distance in relationships that once felt normal, when you stop performing, you will be met with discomfort. People may say, "Why are you so distant? You used to be so nice." What they are often saying is, "I am uncomfortable now that you are no longer someone I can control." One woman who became the emotional anchor for her family shared that when she finally stopped carrying everyone else's burdens, she was called selfish, cold, and ungrateful. But she knew, with a clarity she'd never had, that it was the first time she was truly living as herself. And that, even though it was painful, was freedom. This is the confrontation with the self. It's not about conquering your life, but about understanding it. As you reorganize your inner world, your values, your beliefs, your boundaries, each day becomes a conscious choice. Each decision is a brick in the foundation of a new identity, one built not by society, but from within. If you are somewhere along this path, feeling confused, making choices others don't understand, standing between two worlds, know that this disorientation is not a sign of failure. It is the sign you are on the right track. As you move deeper, the external world loses its power to define you. Career, status, relationships, these become things you value, but they are no longer the pillars holding you up. You build a new value system, one where loyalty to yourself is paramount, where you choose companions not because they validate you, but because they respect your wholeness. This is not a rebellious freedom, it's a quiet, unshakable freedom. Like a person standing at the center of a storm, unafraid, because they have finally learned who they are. Conclusion. In the end, the secret that happy, confident women share is not a trick or a technique. It's a decision. It's the decision to no longer abandon themselves. They stop trying to become the version of themselves that they think will be most loved. They stop chasing validation from outside sources. Instead, they turn inward, with honesty and courage to reclaim the parts of themselves they once hid away. The path to happiness is not in becoming more, but in returning to who you've always been. For them, happiness is no longer a goal to be achieved. It becomes a natural state. The quiet, steady rhythm of a life lived in alignment. It's the way they walk through the world without second-guessing every step. They have faced their shadow and found it not an enemy, but a source of depth. They have shed their masks and found the face beneath was beautiful all along. They have learned to be alone and found they are in excellent company. This is the transformation from a life of performance to a life of presence. From a self built on borrowed pieces to a self that is whole. It's the hardest journey you will ever take, but it's the only one worth taking. If this video resonated with you, if you feel a call to begin this journey inward, please hit the like button for the winds of thought. Channel, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below.